plan. There is no plan.
Okay, we're going to call to order the meeting. This is the July 17th business meeting of the Littleton City Council. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Brinkman?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez?
Present.
Councilmember Cole?
Here.
Councilmember Driscoll?
Here.
Councilmember Elrod?
Here.
Councilmember Fay?
Here.
Councilmember Schlachter?
Will you please rise for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Council, are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. And this evening we have a special recognition. Chief, would you like to come down, please? Our police chief, Chief Stevens, will be presenting special recognition to Officer David Ford.
Good evening, Council. David, step on up. So intimidating. Yes. Thanks for having us here tonight and for recognizing Officer Ford. I'm so pleased to let you know about Officer Ford being the first ever recipient of the Unparalleled Community Service Award that was presented by the Rocky Mountain Law Enforcement Federal Credit Union. They first ever recipient of the award. He received it on June 27th here in the council chamber, and it was a great turnout. And but David has done a tremendous job, and the reason he received this award for this year was his work on our Shop with a Cop program. And this is going into the 4th year of the program this year. And David came to us 3 years ago and said, hey, you know, I want to do more. I want to do more for the community. I want to have an impact on the children who may not otherwise have a wonderful Christmas. And so David, on his own, began organizing this event. Started with, what, about 15 kids, David, do you think?
I planned for 5. We ended up about 13 or so the first year.
Yeah, and each kid gets to get a $100 gift card to Walmart. And they go with an officer and shop. And it's really inspiring. It's a great program. Over the years, it has grown every single year. It's funded entirely by donations. And last year, we had about 34 children that came and shopped with us. And this year, we're going strong again. But I'd just like to recognize David and the work that he's done and the commitment that he has made and continues to make to our community and the youth in our community. Many of our volunteers are here. They help us out with this event, too. It's one of the favorite events of the year for folks. It's really wonderful to see the kids come in, and it's very emotional in a way too when you see the kids come in, and it's kind of cool. Some of them will come in and they have this idea in their brain about where they want to go, right? They have one gift. I want to get this video game or whatever, and they'll blast to the back of the store with an officer and get it, and they're all happy. But then you see other kids who come in and they buy shoes for their siblings, or they buy 15 presents for their family and then nothing for themselves. So it's a really cool program. We have a wonderful plaque here for David here in a second, but I want to give David an opportunity because I talk way too much. But David, just to say a few words, and thank you, David.
Thanks, Chief. Thank you, everyone, for coming here tonight, and it's always an honor to be able to stand in front of such a great panel like this. And Mayor, pleasure to meet you. The Shop with a Cop program isn't necessarily a new thing, and I'd like to say, like, I invented this from the ground up, but you know, it was a great program that I saw in one of the communities that I grew up in as well. Seeing the DARE program go away as I grew up was kind of a sad thing. I really enjoyed having law enforcement with me through my elementary years, going through junior high as well. And during my application process with the city of Littleton, I told my oral board that I wanted to start a program again. I wanted to start a DARE program or something similar to that. And being able to do this a few years ago was actually, you know, a goal that I had set forth way back before I was hired here. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you. On behalf of the City Council, we want to thank you for your service, and we more than appreciate you bringing this idea to the community. This is the type of community outreach I think that makes a community strong and continues to keep Littleton's relationship with the police at such a high level of respect and friends. So we do have a little plaque for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You have a camera.
You want Jerry in this, do you?
Oh, Mayor, you looked away. Hold on. Okay.
So, Mayor?
Thank you.
Could you have them say, is there a place where people can give donations, contributions?
So David, I'll let you handle that actually, now that you're done shaking all the hands.
So all of the donations are handled through Kim Fresquez at the front office, or at the front desk of the police station.
Front desk of the police?
Of the police station,
Right,
yeah.
I want all the people at home to hear that.
So if anybody wants to contribute to the Shop with a Cop program, they just need to write a check to the city of Littleton, and Kim can take the donation that way and make sure it gets placed into the proper avenues. That way it gets to the children when time comes.
Great.
Thank you very much. Chief?
Hi.
Part 2.
What's that?
Part 2.
Part 2, the canines. So you want to talk about it before I...
Go ahead.
So also tonight, thank you for having our newest canine officer join us, Officer Zahn, and his human partner, Krista Handstrom. And Zahn is the newest member of our department. I'm going to let Krista talk a little bit about what Zahn can do and Zahn's special gifts. But I want to take the opportunity right now to thank many of the members who are here in the room, our Citizens Academy Alumni Association, and specifically the Friends of Littleton Canine, which is a 501c3. They have provided us with the opportunity as an organization to have a canine program. Both dogs that we currently have working, I guess one dog's on vacation and is currently camping somewhere. Cold. Yeah, got like probably a can of refried or beans, and hot dogs on his snout, but roasted marshmallows. But we would not have a canine program without the generous donation and support of our community members and Friends of Littleton Canine. They cover nearly all the expenses of the program for the dogs and for their veterinary bills and food and all those things. And it's a great partnership because, of course, the city covers the salary and benefits of our officers and some equipment in there as well. But I'll let Krista talk about Zahn, and we're very happy to have Zahn. He's a very impressive fellow. He's a very social dog, but do not push Officer Handstrom down and run away. He takes that very seriously. So, Krista?
Sure. So, both of our dogs for Littleton Police Department are both dual-purpose dogs. They're trained in both patrol work and narcotics. That's what we deemed was the most important thing for our city and what we have going on. Didn't see a need for a bomb dog. So when we got Zahn, we decided not to have him certified in marijuana with all of the changing laws in the state of Colorado. So he is able to do open-air sniffs, is what our canines used to always be able to do, which has been a great thing to leverage as a patrol officer. He gets to work with all of the different officers on the patrol teams and is able for call-outs, that kind of thing, and then he also does patrol work. So bad guys, like Chief was saying, if somebody is fighting with me, he does officer protection, does apprehension, does building searches. So he's an amazing asset for us in making sure that our officer safety is at the highest level that it can be, making sure that he goes in before we do, and he can do what needs to get done. He's a lot faster than any of us are, so definitely an asset to us. And like Chief was saying, we wouldn't be able to do it without the Friends of Littleton Canine. They actually, CODA was bought by one of the members, and then Zahn was an accumulation of donations from the members and from their fundraising efforts. We do fundraisers 4 times a year that we go to as the canine handlers, and then they do additional and above and beyond, and they've been a really valuable asset to us and to the canine program, and therefore the police department as a whole. I think their time that they give is amazing. I've been very touched by the amount of diligent work that they put in on their own, which is amazing to me because I get paid to do this and I love it. But if I wasn't, I don't know that I'd have the same kind of dedication that these folks do to the program. And it's been such an incredible thing to get to meet all of them and interact with them. So. Zon on a high note has already been used on multiple occasions, has located narcotics, done a couple different cases for the police department, and has had his first apprehension as well. So he's only been in service since September of last year, and he's doing what he's supposed to do. So it was money well spent and best partner I could ask for.
Krista, tell us a little bit about the training you had to go through.
Sure. So initially, for myself, it was the selection process, being selected as the handler. There were 3 candidates to put in. I was selected, and then from that point, I did a lot of research into what venue we wanted to go to actually get the dog. There's hundreds upon hundreds of kennels that provide police dogs. I located one in California called Gold Coast Canine. A gentleman by the name of Rodney Spicer has been dealing with dogs since the 80s and has a very high standard for what he expects from his canines. So I went out there for 5 weeks to do a dual-purpose canine handler training course with Zon. It was a rigorous 5 weeks, involved me being in the bite suit along with training with Zon. It was just 2 people in the class, so every time that I sent Zon, my partner was in the bite suit and vice versa. So I got fit by suit real quick. Had some bruises to prove that I was doing what I needed to be doing. And then we came back, and every month we're mandated to get an additional 16 hours of training per case law to ensure that the dog is up to requirements for his training, make sure that he's doing what he's supposed to for narcotics and for apprehension both. Focus on things like call-offs so that he doesn't go and bite somebody he's not supposed to, obedience, narcotics, to ensure that he has a minimum amount of positive fines and that sort of thing. So making sure that we're the best team that we can be. And both teams are certified through Colorado Police Canine Association, which again holds a very high standard for what their dogs are expected to do at a minimum. And we do certifications every year.
Excellent. Well, we do have a gift for Zon. No. But before we give him his gift, I also want to thank the Friends of Littleton Canine. I was on council, and I believe Councilmember Cole was also, when we had an opportunity to purchase our first canine. And it was quite a sales job that the chief had to do for the council. It was the first dog, and there was a lot of expenses. Councils don't really like to spend money on things that continue to cost us money. Sure. So, but we did. I think that there was an opportunity at that time where there was maybe a sale. It was something that we just couldn't turn down. So we did. And from then on, we have not been asked to purchase another canine. And we have, I think Zon is our 3rd or 4th?
4th total.
4th canine. And the Friends of Littleton Canines, they created themselves and they coalesced around this issue, and they have been incredibly active in fundraising and support of the canine group. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate the way that the community has supported you. And we want to be also part of that support. So thank you so much. It's a great partnership.
Time to go.
He's like, okay, yeah.
All right.
Can you try that taser on Jerry? We need a little entertainment tonight.
Yeah. Flop around. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Okay, face this way. We'll do.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, that's perfect.
He can do whatever he wants.
Jump up there and say, hi, it's Yvonne.
Yeah, we're good. Absolutely amazing.
All right. Thank you very much for coming, our officers and our four-legged officer. Appreciate you guys being here this evening. Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is public comment. And public comment is an opportunity to address the City Council on any item that is currently on our agenda or items of interest. The City Council is not authorized by the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at the meeting on any issue raised by public comment that's not part of tonight's agenda. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes, and the mayor may refer the matter to staff to obtain additional information and report back to council as appropriate. So, as appropriate, there are responses to certain comments as needed. I want to make a couple comments this evening just in terms of what's on the agenda and kind of how the process is. We have a number of items on consent, and some of those items are first reads. First reads are items that will end up typically in 2 weeks on a second reading and a public hearing, and those items by our charter need to be put onto the public hearing, second reading public hearing by a first read. So it's a process, a procedural thing for us to have an item on first read. It is not an opportunity for there to be a public hearing on it, although you're certainly welcome to come down and speak. Your comments will not be part of the public hearing unless you come back during the public hearing and make those comments. The other thing I wanted to note before we go too far is under general business, we have 2 items, 2 resolutions. One resolution in particular, that is a resolution that it is not a second reading, so it is not a public hearing on that resolution. That's the Bellevue Corridor Plan. So if you are here to speak to the Bellevue Corridor Plan, you'll need to do that during public comment also. So we will get started. I will read a name, and if you don't mind, come down and you can repeat your name and give us your address. You'll have 3 minutes. And the first name is Ron Bowers. Ron? Yeah. Come on down. The acoustics aren't that good in here. Yeah.
Sorry, I've had a very hard time hearing what was going on. My name is Ron Bowers. My wife is Judy. My son and my daughter, we've lived in Littleton since about 1976, so over 40 years. And I'm speaking for them, my son Kurt and his wife Hillary, who residents here, my neighbors, and also other friends of Littleton, to object to the proposed project at the southwest corner of Mineral and Santa Fe. The very large housing project. I don't know whether it's condos or apartments, but approximately 400 units. My objection is that when I moved to Littleton, there was nothing south of County Line Road except antelope and jackrabbits. My kids used to love to go ride down County Line Road. They called it the roller coaster road. Well, it's not there anymore. I think there was about 1.5 million people, Denver Metro, when we moved here, and I think now we're approaching 3.5 million people. We don't have the infrastructure to handle the population here in Littleton and in Denver and Denver Metro. I'm sure everyone is aware, get on Santa Fe at C-470 and drive north at 7:30 in the morning, and you will enjoy your ride all the way to I-25. If you're going further north, you're in trouble. But anyway, I'm representing them and objecting to this project. I have no problem with housing. They want to build single-family housings, but not 400 apartment complex or condos. We don't need another 1,000 people in Littleton. That's my comment.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Next is Paul Bingham.
Good evening, Council. Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle. I'm here to speak against consent item 6C. In 2013, the citizens had a citizens initiative that the citizens of this city voted for. That's our current situation with Section 27 having to do with executive sessions. This proposed change throws all of that away and totally goes against that vote by the citizens. These same reasons for passing this thing were given then against it. I would appreciate it a lot. I think the citizens of this city would also appreciate it if this was not passed. They voted on Section 27 to be like it is for a reason. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Yvonne Saper?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can pull it down.
My name's Yvonne Saper. I live at 3356 West Hialeah Avenue, and I'm here to give comment on the Bellevue Avenue corridor plan that's at the corner of Federal and Bellevue. Some of the concerns that our household has on that is that the landlord failed to maintain that property when it was all businesses. My nephew's school, Littleton Prep, did most of their own maintenance inside that building. They were doing electrical, plumbing, roof repairs because the landlord failed to do that. If it's going to be that same landlord and we allow them to do high density apartments and things like that, we have great concern that those will not be maintained. One of the other concerns that we have, we saw the police here tonight, and the police presence, I'm assuming that that's been taken into account on the draft. There needs to be some police presence, I think, around the area. We don't see that much. We have had vandalism, car break-ins, things going on. I know that everybody thinks those are, non-victim crimes, but when your house is broken into, you feel much like a victim. And then my third concern is the infrastructure issues that are over there. We don't have the infrastructure to handle that kind of traffic that's going to be added when you do something that's a lot of people coming in. The water, we have low pressure on our water now. So that could compound the problem with that. We have electrical that goes out in that neighborhood all the time. Those are issues. And the biggest issue dealing with utilities is the sewer. We already have a known sewer problem that's going to take a few years to repair. And so by adding that kind of volume of people onto a difficult sewer system is a major concern. One of the suggestions is, instead of high-density things, hopefully look at mixed use on that area and not let it go all residential and high-density, but some business levels and possibly apartments or condos, such as South Glen did. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jim Mascolo?
Can you please spell your last name, please?
Mascllo. My name is Jim Mescal, and I live at 1642 West Canal Court in the South Park area of Littleton. And first I wanted to thank Mark Ralph, the city manager, and Jocelyn Mills, the community development director, for being willing to take my calls a couple weeks ago. I wish to talk about Triple J Armory's plans to move into a building a few feet away from our property. Triple J Armory has already had 3 violent burglaries in the last year and a half or so in its present location on County Line Road. These happened in the middle of the night when no one was around. There's a nightmare scenario that keeps going through my mind, and that's that some night down the road, once Triple J has moved in, I or one of my neighbors will be out late, or more likely one of the young adults in our community will be out late, and while approaching our entranceway, we'll just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time when still another violent burglary is underway at Triple J Armory. Obviously, you can be in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's just life. But I don't think in a safe city that the wrong place should be the entranceway to one's home. Common sense would say that where Triple J Armory is located right now, away from people's homes, is the logical place for them to be. If the city's land use policies aren't intended to protect residents in the South Park area, or if Triple J is the kind of business the city envisions as making sense next to people's homes in South Park, then either the zoning regulations need to be changed or the city should never have allowed residential development there in the first place. Allowing a gun shop with highly prized merchandise that once stolen can be easily sold to criminals at a high price to move into an isolated residential area is asking for trouble. We have traditionally been known as a safe and quiet neighborhood. That seems to be changing unless the city council and the city manager act to avert a potential tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you. Maureen Hartleb.
Hi there. I'm
Hi.
Maureen Hartleb. I live at 1629 West Canal Court. And I have expressed concerns about Triple J Armory, and I wanted to thank the city manager and city council for being as responsive as they are. I feel really heard, and that's important. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron? Ron gets to come down and spell his last name.
It's L-I-L-I-S-C-H-K-I-E-S, Lelouch's.
What he said. I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Yes, Lelouch's, L-I-L-I-S-C-H-K-I-E-S.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got Ron.
My name is Ronald Lelouch. I actually live in Eagle, Colorado, and I'm here with my mother, Renata. And we own a commercial property, and this is also relating to the Triple J Armory, where their current location and moving into the location, the proposed location. First I want to say thank you for giving me the time and opportunity to address the council here. And I also want to give kudos to Mr. Kemp. I talked to him, I believe, for almost an hour on this issue, so I appreciate the time. And also Jocelyn. I had wrote a letter of protest that I had sent to Jocelyn back on the 9th. Actually, my mother did. And just as Jim and Maureen had stated earlier, we're concerned, about that kind of business moving into the South Park area. We own the building right next door, the commercial building next door to them at 8122 South Park Lane. We have a major tenant in there. He owns the building on the other side of the proposed 8152 South Park Lane. And they have a lot of people walking back and forth. Now, there was an issue brought earlier, I don't want to go into the details about, but they wanted to build a pathway of walking, and I know your city managers probably, and your attorney is very well aware of this issue. that didn't happen, but they still have to walk back and forth, and some of the ladies that actually work there are kind of a little bit emotionally distraught about knowing that this gun shop's going to be there, considering what has happened to them in the past with these 3 violent robberies. So they've expressed concern to us, and we, being a landlord, we're trying to address their concerns. And the gentleman that owns that building on the other side of them also has those concerns too, because it's his employees, and he's probably has some liability with his employees. And they have a 24/7 operation, so they're walking back and forth between the buildings. So we don't think this is a very good idea. You know, and as Jim and Maureen stated, I don't know if everyone knows, I just wanted to be part of the record. You know, the letter was part for the building permit. I don't know if anything could be done with not denying their building permit. But, you know, like I said, there's 3 daycare centers there. There's an elementary, middle school. There's a senior care facility, 2 residential communities, and numerous other commercial buildings that are located right in that area. And another thing I wanted to add is if they do a retail, they only have about 40 parking spaces, and there's another issue I brought up with the city attorney. And for a 20,000 square foot building, if it's 4 per 1,000 square foot, they need 80 spaces, and they don't even have the parking anyway for a retail outlet. So it's another issue I wanted to bring up. So thank you very much for letting me address the council.
Thank you. Carol Brejak.
I'm Carol Brezak. I live in the 4th District. I'd like to call your attention to the length of your consent agenda item and your general business item. Citizens have 3 minutes to address all of that. Something needs to be done to allow citizens to participate in their government more than we are allowed to at present. Regarding the Bellevue Corridor plan, I ask you to put it on the shelf. The charter amendments are not housekeeping amendments. And if you believe that they are, you need to go back and read them very carefully, because they are a lot more than housekeeping. I'll spend the bulk of my time talking about the inclusion election for South Metro. Today I attended a meeting at South Metro where a single individual is determining the ballot language that will be in front of the voters in November. Now that's regardless of the fact that you had a ballot question in the agreement that you signed with South Metro. I believe South Metro is in breach of their contract. On page 4 of the contract, it says the South Metro District approves the resolution initiating inclusion election following the public hearing. It shall immediately file a motion requesting an order from the Douglas County District Court setting a coordinated mail ballot election to seek voter approval of the inclusion, appoint the designated election official, and approve the ballot question in substantially the form attached hereto and incorporated in as Exhibit B, which means you had a ballot question in your agreement, which was labeled Exhibit B, and this is saying that immediately following the approval of the inclusion election, that South Metro will ask the court to set the election date, designate the election official, and approve the ballot question. That is not what they did. They asked the court to set the date, and they asked the court to designate an election official. They did not ask the court to set the ballot question, or to approve the ballot question that literally was set May 2nd at a South Metro Board meeting. But for whatever reason now, South Metro Board attorney claims that what they did on May 2nd was not what they told the public that they did. So as I was sitting at the meeting today offering my contributions to this process, I was surprised that no one from South Metro Board or no one from the City of Littleton was there to offer their input on what the ballot question will look like when it gets in front of the voters in November. You don't have a say anymore. This single individual will write this ballot question. And I'm surprised that there was no interaction from this council. If there was, and it was done by email, I would appreciate knowing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Chadbourne.
So my name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here, and I wanted to talk about item 7A, which is the Bellevue Corridor document. What I'm going to ask you to do is not call it a plan, because it is not a plan technically, and it is not written from the city's point of view. It's a great document in a lot of ways. If I was a retailer or commercial person, I would say, great, you guys have saved me some money. I really appreciate the information in here, and I'm going to tell you as a citizen, I appreciate that too. I've walked that area with flyers and petitions. I've talked to people. I'm going to tell you that it's 8-2 against 350 apartments there or high-density residential. I know this by talking to people. So it shouldn't say that there should be mixed use without very precise targets, because we have an example of so-called mixed use right above Old Town Littleton, and it's a disaster. It's 70 or 80% residential. It's a wrapped parking structure. It is not appropriate for a B2 zoned property, community business. So the way that this can be made into a plan, there is a path forward. So for right now, Council, I'm asking that you call it a report or a study or a concept. And the path forward to plan is to make it city-centric and add the components about the city impact. So what those are measurable traffic outcomes. Populations, so we need to know how much the residential component of that area, that Bellevue Corridor, is going to grow. In some scenarios about where that would be and what density is required where. And you could have a density where you could have a scenario where all the density is in one place. You could have it spread out. We have every right as citizens to know that, and you as decision makers must know that to make the decision. There's a traffic study for Santa Fe coming up, and again, the city has literally no business approving this without knowing where that Pella is going and what the results are. Sterling Ranch is at 100 homes and it's supposed to build out to 12,000. We have huge issues with Santa Fe in traffic, and it's being displaced to Lowell already. Also infrastructure, I think someone already mentioned. This must be city-centric in order to be a city plan. So we need to add that to this. And the other thing is we need an estimate of expenses and cost for this. And we've never done that before, but the city needs to do it to make this a city plan. So please recognize this as great work, call it a report or study or concept, and then let's set in motion what we need to do to make it a real plan. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Pam. Jeannie Erickson.
Can you turn on the screen, please?
No, it's not working. Sorry, Jeannie.
Okay. Hello, my name is Jeannie Erickson. I live in District 1. I have two items to address this evening. Number one, a couple weeks ago, I heard you in your study session again talk about a suggested meeting called Next Generation, or a suggested committee, I'm sorry. I'm not in favor of a group that is set up according to age, between the ages of 17, 20, 30-something, may or may not live in the city of Littleton. I find that to be age discrimination. We all should have the same access to city council. If you can't attend a city council meeting, you can always email city council. I have many other things I'd like to be doing tonight than this. Number two, I would like to address the bullet point in the Bellevue Corridor document that concerns me regarding this so-called plan. I believe this so-called plan will pass tonight because many council members, at least 4, will think that there is not a plan in this area. So yes, there needs to be a plan, and we spent money on having this document made, and we had 3 meetings with the public, so that means we've done our due diligence with respect to community outreach. So let's pass this. Then at least there'll be a document for the Bellevue Corridor. My concern is that this entire document is only being presented so that the owners of Columbine Square can use urban renewal money to develop their property. If this is possibly true, this is a very sad day for Littleton. On page 24, this is what you can't see. It does say that urban renewal is a suggested idea. I do not believe the property owners at Columbine Square, at Bellevue and Federal should ever receive a penny of urban renewal money. He self-blighted this property and has not been a good neighbor to the citizens of Littleton. We have been told that this is not a regulatory document. Let's hope so, because this statement in this document really scares me as to what plans are being made regarding urban renewal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. There's no one else signed up, but if there's someone who would like to speak, you can do so at this point. Do we have? Please state your name and address.
It's Dan Radulovich, 7,000 South Gallup Street since 2009. I was here at the last meeting to talk about the Airbnb situation that we had in our neighborhood. I would like to just thank the council for taking the issue seriously, and also thank Mr. Ralph, Mr. Kemp as well as Jocelyn and Sama for basically hearing us out and getting the ball rolling on this. I do appreciate that, and in fact our entire neighborhood appreciates that you've put this in motion much faster than we expected it. I know the original study sessions were set for like sometime in August. They'd been moved up to just last week, and even tonight we're going to have a vote on the emergency moratorium. That's the word I'm looking for. I would encourage you all to definitely vote for that moratorium and make sure that it goes into place. The concerns that most of us have is that it's only for 90 days, and we're not sure if that can be extended another 90 days in case nothing is done in the next 3 months. That's probably our biggest concern at this point, but it is clear that you guys do want to fix this law, and we appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, we'll close public comment. And we will move to the consent agenda. I just wanted to also just repeat again, the consent agenda actually has 9 items. 6 of those items are first readings that will move to public hearings. Those public hearings, that will be the fun meeting where we will have 6 public hearings. So consent agenda items that are on here for first reading, it is a procedural. We'll go to public hearing with those, and at that time, the public will have an opportunity to comment, and their comments will be held for the record. So we'll go ahead and start with our consent agenda. We have item A, which is an ordinance on first read amending ordinance number 23, series 2017, known as the Annual Appropriations Bill for all municipal purposes for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2018, ending December 31, 2018. Ordinance 23, 2018 is an ordinance on first read amending the City Charter, Section 23, regarding qualifications of council members and deleting Section 29 regarding council membership rules. Ordinance 25, 2018 on first read amending City Charter, Section 27 regarding council meetings. Ordinance 26, 2018, ordinance on first read amending City Charter Ordinance 26, 2018, ordinance on first read amending City Charter Sections 54, 55, and 57, and deleting 56 regarding the City Attorney. Ordinance 27, 2018 is ordinance on first read amending City Charter Section 58 regarding establishment, appointment, qualification, terms, etc. of the judge. Ordinance 28, 2018, on first read, amending City Charter Section 117 regarding revocable licenses and deleting Section 118 regarding revocable permits. Resolution 30, 2018. This is a resolution approving a police recruit training agreement with the City of Lakewood to use the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office and Lakewood Police Department's combined regional academy for recruit police officer training. Item 18243 is a motion to appoint Councilmember Schlechter as the city liaison to the Littleton Public Schools. A note there, he should have been here tonight. That's what happens when you don't show up, we appoint you. Item 18241 is approval of the June 5, 2018 regular meeting minutes. And I need a motion, please.
Mayor, I move to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve consent agenda A through I. Ready to vote?
The motion is unanimous. It passes.
Something like that.
Been a month.
That's it.
Okay, now we move to general business. Our first order of business on general business is Resolution 33, 2018. This is a resolution recommending City Council action on the Bellevue Avenue Corridor Plan. I believe we have a presentation from staff. And the overhead, et cetera, is not working this evening, so I think that we do have, are there handouts on the presentation? Were there handouts? No? Okay. Council, we have it on our...
Yeah.
You got.
Yeah, and you'll just need to direct us as to where you want us to be.
Got it. Okay. Good evening, Council. Jocelyn Mills, representing Community Development. And yes, we are presenting the Bellevue Corridor Plan as well as the process to get to this point. I wanted to first just give a context for the discussion this evening to remind you that in Littleton, our corridor plans are a component of our overall citywide comprehensive plan. And typically, a corridor plan provide a vision and context for future decision-making to realize set vision over time. And so that is actually the case for this Bellevue Corridor Plan. It articulates a vision for this area of Littleton and identifies recommendations that over time will implement this vision. The plan is not to provide any land, any private property, any land use approvals for this. And any, as you know, any private property, if they were to want to obtain some sort of approval, they would need to go through our development review process for that. So with that, we did hire the firm of Clarion to assist with this project, and I'm going to have Darcy White come up and present the presentation, but I will be also available for questions after. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can you talk?
Mayor, if I may, we're trying to reset the computer in order to get the presentation back here on the screen. So if you just bear with us just for a minute here.
Okay.
I think it's important if we can to get this presentation up on the screen for the public.
Is this the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Perhaps you may want to take a quick adjournment here for a few minutes. Give us about 5 minutes here. Let's see if we can get this thing back up.
Okay, we'll adjourn until 7:30. Bellevue Avenue corridor plan was provided in the back, so you all may have it in the packets. It's in the very back of your packet, and we will be walking through the PowerPoint presentation. All of council have it on their iPads, and then we will put this, it should be in our agenda packet online, so if you are online watching, you can go to our packet and you can pull it up there. It is the very last item in the packet, and it is labeled PowerPoint presentation. So we will all just figure this out together and see how we go. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Darcy White with Clarion Associates. I'm joined this evening by Matt Prosser with Economic and Planning Systems. He provided the retail analysis portion of this project, so he will be available to answer questions as well.
His first name was?
Matt Prosser. And I will jump in and give you just a quick overview of the plan, starting a little bit with the process. And wanted to talk, Jocelyn touched on some of the role of a corridor plan. This plan is really meant to be a tool for the city and the community to guide future decisions in this corridor. As she noted, the comprehensive plan functions at a very high level, so this is basically taking us down to that 10,000-foot level in terms of some recommendations for this corridor. So also wanted to note that this plan builds on a lot of other work that's been done in the corridor. The South Platte Corridor Vision, the working group have had a lot of projects and recommendations related to the corridor. South Suburban Parks and Rec, there's a lot of different studies that have been done, maybe not smack in the middle of the corridor, but on the periphery of the corridor. So we've really done a lot of work to try to reinforce the recommendations of those plans and reflect the work that's been done through this process.
Oh, Darcy, excuse me?
Yep.
Just a formatting suggestion, perhaps when whatever slide you're on, you can just say the title so that everyone, you know what I mean? You can kind of work through the presentation that way if you guys are.
Let us know when you turn the page.
Okay. So moving to the plan process. So we started this project last fall and have been working through a series of steps to get us to this point. We spent time pretty much through the end of last year putting together our inventory work, initial community meeting, and also doing a lot of the analysis work on the ground, working with stakeholders and just doing some due diligence with staff in terms of what's happening in the corridor today. We took the preliminary recommendations based on that to the community in February, and then worked into the draft plan. So moving to the opportunities for input, at each step in the process, there were different ways that people could provide input into the process. We did hold 3 separate community meetings. Staff facilitated some small group discussions in the fall as part of the initial input in the neighborhood. And then we had 2 larger community events in February and in April. And at each round of input, we had an opportunity for folks to weigh in through the Open Littleton feedback mechanism on your website. So we were able to leverage, the ability for people to weigh in on that as we made our way through the process. We also, as you're aware, we had a study session with the Planning Commission back in May. We made some revisions based on their feedback. A couple weeks later, we met with this group in a work session and did the same process. So we had a chance to fine-tune some of those recommendations before the public draft was released in June. So moving to the plan foundations, wanted to just really stress that the community feedback we received through the process, the foundational work that was done, really are the foundation of this process and ultimately this plan. And I'll talk a little bit about how specifically we've tried to address what we've heard from the community, but that's really reflected through the summary of issues and opportunities that you see in the existing conditions report, and then also building on some of the retail analysis work that Economic and Planning Systems did. So shifting to the key findings slide, this is really where we took kind of what we learned from that initial outreach with the community, what we had heard, our work, kind of spending time in the corridor, what some of those key issues and opportunities were. We heard from folks concerns about the underutilized commercial properties in the corridor, concerns about pedestrian and bicycle safety, wanting to make sure that sorry, that caught me off guard for a second.
That's how we're going to do this? All right.
Better than nothing. So, and also heard a lot of concern about how future development in this corridor would impact the existing neighborhood. So we've tried to take those issues into account through this process, as well as the traffic volumes. A lot of opportunities that participants in this process identified that they really wanted to, either they loved about the corridor, kind of what they enjoy about living there now, or opportunities they saw for the future. And so that really focused on the river corridor, focused on creating places for people to gather. People really like the sense of community. A lot of folks have lived in that neighborhood, the neighborhood surrounding Bellevue Avenue for many, many years. But we also met a number of folks through the process who are new to this area. And so a lot of people who are interested in looking for changes over time and building on the strong foundation that's there. So shifting gears into the plan recommendations, the plan's structured into kind of 4 basic parts, and I'll touch on each of these briefly. The vision and principles really reflects directly those issues and opportunities that we talked about a moment ago. So these are really kind of the foundation for the vision. We've got goals and policies to support each of these, and this is really the core component of the plan. Principle 1 focuses on identity, and this is really getting at some of those things that we heard early on in terms of, parts of the corridor that have a very distinct identity and others that, basically the Bellevue Corridor, some of the commercial areas that are lacking in identity. So there were some suggestions about how to create a more cohesive and distinct destination for this area within the city. Mobility and safety, we spent a lot of time talking about this in the plan. I'll touch on some of the specifics later. But this is an area where we're really trying to build on the recommendations of other work that's been done and add in a lot of specificity in terms of the feedback we've heard from the community, how to make it safer for people to get around if they're not driving within the corridor. Protecting and reinvesting in corridor neighborhoods. As I mentioned earlier, we heard loud and clear that there is concern in the community about what types of changes, what impacts future changes might have on existing neighborhoods. So we've tried to really address those areas of transition, as well as the areas where you may have neighborhoods that abut some of those potential future opportunities, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. Principle 4 really focuses on those underutilized properties. And I think when you look at the Bellevue Corridor as a whole, it's a pretty large area. We deal with a lot of different types of places, ranging from single-family neighborhoods to high-density neighborhoods, golf course, river, a lot of different things to deal with. So when you really dial in on the underutilized commercial areas of the corridor, it's a pretty small portion of the overall corridor, and so the recommendations really reflect that targeted approach. We've really tried to tailor the goals and policies in this section based on the recommendations EPS provided in terms of the retail analysis. So it acknowledges that the big boxes that exist in the corridor today are a critical part of the fiscal health of the city. We really need to acknowledge that and preserve those, kind of keep them going, help them thrive, but also focus on the smaller businesses, both existing and future. People really acknowledge that local businesses are part of what makes this corridor special to them in terms of some of those opportunities that exist where they like to spend time. So having that balance between the national retailers, kind of the bigger guys, as well as those smaller opportunities. And then the last one I'll mention is really directly tied to some of the values that we heard from the community in terms of wanting more places to gather. They really want a place that's more walkable. They want they enjoy the park, the river corridor, some of the improvements that have been made there, but looking at how do we create more of those places as the community evolves over time. So that can be anywhere from along the river's edge, where some of those improvements have recently been made, to other destinations as commercial areas within the corridor evolve. So shifting to the second part of this plan, the corridor recommendations, there's two types of areas that I want to talk about. The opportunity areas, which are the areas where really we see the greatest need for revitalization. Either they're vacant now, they're not performing well, the community thinks they're in need of reinvestment, or we have opportunity for future development. The vast majority of this corridor is built out, so this plan really focuses on those infill and redevelopment opportunities in very targeted areas. And then I'll talk about the corridor enhancements, which really focus on those multimodal aspects here in a moment. So this map, the corridor recommendations, opportunity areas map, gives you a sense of the locations that we've targeted as potential opportunity areas. And as I mentioned, these are either underutilized areas or areas where investments are already being made, and there's the greatest opportunity for improvement to align these areas with the corridor vision. So starting with our opportunity areas specific sites, the first one is Columbine Square. And this is one of several, but one of the bigger ones and there's been the most discussion about this particular area. So in terms of the overall mix of uses on this site, I think it's important to stress that the plan talks about a mix of uses on this site. This is driven in part by the retail analysis in terms of recognizing that retail is changing. Matt can talk more about this if you would like to hear more details, but I think we're trying to acknowledge that many retail centers in the region and nationally are evolving. They're incorporating residential as a way to support the remaining retail that exists. So the plan recommendations focus on supporting retail, yes, but a smaller percentage of the site with complementary residential to supplement that. And so there's a lot of specific discussion in this particular area about how residential would relate to the surrounding neighborhoods and some of the specific types of connections and such that would help benefit the surrounding neighborhood. So a lot of different things to consider on this site related to that mix of uses. Centennial Square really seeks to build on some recent improvements the property owner is making in this center, both near term, acknowledging those, but also looking at ways to reorient the center longer term and take advantage of some of the opportunities behind that site. Riverside Downs, this is an area a lot of residents really called out as something they really they value within the corridor. The businesses in this area, outdoor seating and those types of things were things they wanted to see more of. So taking advantage of the recent improvements that have been made in the river corridor right-of-way and really trying to maximize the value of those improvements to the community. So over time, looking at ways to activate the parking lots in that area and take advantage of that river frontage that you do have in that area. Arapahoe Center and Centennial Plaza, this is another area where the idea of neighborhood businesses was really called out as something that was important to the community. So overall, there was a sense that this particular center is one people can walk to. They frequent it a lot. It's got kind of your perfect mix of everyday uses that people need. And so trying to support them in their continued effort and work with them to try to make some targeted improvements to make pedestrian and bicycle access safer. And then we also highlight several long-term opportunity areas. And these are really intended to look much longer term. Most of these things we're talking about are kind of in the 5 to 10 year time frame. These could be 20-year opportunities, but what we wanted to do is highlight them as things that could be very beneficial to the city and this corridor in the long term from a circulation standpoint, as well as from a business standpoint, being able to have quicker access to the corridor and more supporting residences potentially in the long term. Lastly,
Can I just ask?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
One of those is in Inglewood.
I'm sorry?
One of those is in Inglewood. Well, two of them are in Inglewood.
Correct. And the reason we've identified those sites in Inglewood is that they are, one of them is the recycling facility along the river. That really plays directly into this corridor in terms of thinking about, as this area transitions over time, that may not be the highest and best use of that site in the future. The city of Inglewood has acknowledged that. But we also saw it as an opportunity as you enter into a process of looking at your long-term transportation plan, having a connection through there, you have a dead end right now, that could be very beneficial to your overall circulation system. So it's something we wanted to consider, put it on your radar screen, basically. It may take many, many years. It may never come to fruition, but if there were a discussion to come up in the future where that potential was raised, we wanted to flag it in this plan for that reason. Moving on to the corridor enhancements, this is an area where we get into specific recommendations, so down to particular intersections, trail enhancements. We started with a foundation of looking at all the work that had been done, the plans that had been adopted in this area, and really took that to the community. The diagram at the top is actually the online tool that the city used beyond the public meeting for folks to weigh in and provide their feedback on specific locations where they thought there were safety concerns, or improvements that were needed. So that was a very valuable tool for us in terms of being able to translate those ideas into the recommendations in the plan. So you'll see a lot of very targeted recommendations that tie into that input that we got from the community. And this map reflects that, the kind of the compilation of those recommendations. So this is kind of more the types of improvements that the city might work its way through as part of the CIP on an annual basis, through the advancing this through the transportation plan, and kind of targeting those improvements over time. And then the last piece I'll touch on briefly is implementation. This is, as Jocelyn mentioned, a plan that will be implemented on an incremental basis. This is not a plan that will be one set of improvements and we're done. It's meant to be more of a targeted approach so that as opportunities arise within the corridor, you have direction about potential priorities and feedback from the community to take into consideration. So the recommendations, the strategies are tied directly to those guiding principles that I mentioned. So this deals with everything from policies and programs to regulatory tools, as well as some of those physical improvements, whether they're sidewalk enhancements or other types of enhancements. So this is something we see as a tool to guide future work programs, CIP, as well as to help allocate potentially staff time and other resources as the council desires. We did not identify a specific set of priority strategies, and through our discussions with Planning Commission and the City Council prior, they acknowledge that one opportunity that exists with this document is for the discussion of priorities as part of the budgeting process, whether that's related to sidewalks or other enhancements that might be desired in the corridor. So in terms of the implementation structure, I just wanted to point out, we do talk about roles and responsibilities. I mentioned early on, this is a plan that is already being and will continue to be implemented by the city in collaboration with many other partners. And so we've tried to call out those partners in the implementation plan and the departments that they would be or are working with now. So that's really kind of the structure for that. So that is all I have in terms of the plan overview. I wanted to close just by saying, I think we've tried to take a pretty methodical look at the feedback we've heard and try to put together a balanced plan that reflects what we feel like are perspectives of the community, but recognizing that there are going to be cases where we aren't making everyone happy. That's the case with every plan that we're involved in, I think. But what we try to do is try to balance those different perspectives and provide a plan that's going to be useful for the city and provide greater predictability for the neighborhood going forward. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Jocelyn?
With that, we're happy to answer any questions or any comments that you may have for us.
Council questions? Karina?
I have some comments. Thank you for the presentation. As you were going through the presentation, and despite having read all the documents, something new comes up. Improving connectivity. So we definitely saw that throughout this corridor, and I think this plan, and I think that's where we really have a strong opportunity right now, given that connectivity is talking about connectivity to the Mary Carter Greenway, as well as just the corridor to Santa Fe, et cetera. And there's so much work that we're doing with Dr. Cog, with the Denver Regional Council of Governments. And these are exactly the types of projects that we can more easily bring forward, so these really feel like they can come to fruition. And I think we're in a good position to start bringing some of this really to life. So it feels very possible. And then the other item was the concerns around the sewers. Did you bring that up? And I think even a citizen brought it up. Again, what a great opportunity. We're doing a lot of work, identifying our sewer system and where the gaps are. So I just feel like there are many things that are coming together at the right time. that really positions us well, that this plan will not be one of those plans that sit on a shelf yet again, but really a plan that we can implement. So, thank you. I have the other item that I want to talk about here is what I really also appreciated with was the introduction of the vision. And I think that gives us, one, it really painted the picture before we got into the details. And then the details helped us to really articulate and know that that is possible. And I really look at this as a way that we are moving forward and how we are working, and a preview to what may come from the visioning process overall. So again, just feel really great about the work that was done here and the work that I think will come in the future. I do have two minor edits to the plan itself that I'd like to recommend, but I'll wait until maybe we have a motion on the table
Yeah,
or
we
other
could go
comments.
ahead and make comments and questions, and then we'll go for a motion. Jerry?
All right, just simple questions here, or comments. So when will traffic studies be completed on that area that are recent traffic? And what I'm thinking of is like around Lowell, I'm concerned about the traffic increase from what it is today to what it could become around Bellevue in the very northwest part of the Bellevue section. Do we have plans for doing any traffic studies in there?
I might defer to the city manager for that.
Well, I think with Councilmember Elrod's comment about kind of the timing of this relative to the visioning and comprehensive plan, as the council is aware, we're also funding a transportation master plan. And part of that project specifically, we're actually doing a travel demand model. And so, yes, we will be collecting data from our traffic counts here to input into a model. So specifically for this area, we do have counts. And you will be able to see as part of that transportation master plan how the network functions from a level of service perspective. Remember, I've talked about this over time, but the city currently doesn't have a level of service standard for traffic. That will be a policy issue coming to you here probably this fall at some point. So maybe that's a long answer to say probably starting in the fall and the first part of next year as part of the comp plan, you'll start to see.
Yeah, thank you.
kind of
Yeah,
that
you did
traffic
answer it.
impact.
The other part, will that study, the traffic or transportation study, will that also include the Bellevue as far as the walkability of it? Because right now it's not exactly a pleasant walk. So will it address that somehow?
The transportation master plan will be a comprehensive plan about all elements, including pedestrian movements. So a plan like this, if council does adopt that, will actually influence the outcomes of that particular part of it. I think, depending on how the council's direction back to me, one of the things, the strategies could be for us as staff to actually look at very specific implementation plans. So as we integrate this further into the comp plan and the transportation master plan, we could come back to you very specifically about pedestrian elements.
And my last question or comment, then what did we say, there's 4 or 5 different sewer districts? And I presume it all flows to one place, the Littleton Inglewood plant.
Correct.
But how does it complicate things?
Well, I think the utilities is probably in a better position here to kind of understand kind of the demands of a corridor over time. We do have some challenges there, which we, in fact, had a briefing here by our Public Works Director a week ago. But I do believe that as we kind of look at this corridor long-term, we can predict with different types of land uses. In fact, we can do that through the entire comprehensive planning area. But specifically for this corridor, we can look at the demands on the utility system, sewer as an example.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's it, thanks.
Yeah, I too want to thank Darcy and Matt and staff for, I thought, a very thorough plan. Is there anything legally binding about this plan, or is this simply, as Darcy said, a tool for future development or for owners to perhaps save them a little money to see what the citizens really want to see in this area?
Yes, that's correct. It's a vision document for this area of Littleton.
Right. Perfect. And did we engage Inglewood at all?
Absolutely.
And do they have any skin in the game?
They had a lot of discussions with us as far as when we were collecting technical data and interviewing stakeholders in this area, so yes.
And have you seen anything, and I'm just doing this because I already know the answer, but have you seen any plans for Columbine Square?
Has the city, no, community development, we have not seen any even pre-application meeting for
Right, so I wanna
that
sort of
particular property.
I just want to put people's mind at ease that we have a long way to go in Columbine Square, and obviously living in District 1 and being your representative, I too have a lot of the concerns that the citizens have with traffic, with walkability. Everything that's in this plan, I think, is very valid, but I think we're jumping the gun a little bit with Columbine Square. We all understand high density is not preferred, but we got to wait for the owner to come back to us with a plan. Thank you.
Jocelyn, couple questions. As I think it was Darcy stated, there were 3 community meetings, and I think all of us council members, I know I did, got many, many emails from people who didn't feel listened to or still had a lot of issues. How does it work that we have those community meetings and still have people so upset about the situation? How do those two things fit together?
Well, as you know, we always advertise and do the best with outreach, whatever the situation may be. And in this case, it was through the internet, our website, tried to get the communication out to the neighbors and to the community to participate. You know, how people choose to prioritize their time is really, you know, not up to me to decide that. You know, people hear different things. You get comments on a variety of pieces. I think some of the concerns out there may be primarily about Columbine Square. So I think to Councilmember Driscoll's point, I think it's important for people to realize that this plan is not a regulatory document and it does not provide Columbine Square with any approved future use for that property. When that property owner wants to come forward with something, they have to submit it to the department and they have to go through that development review process. So I think there might have been maybe not as much awareness about that. That seems to be some of the comment that you received.
It seems that many people think that high density development is imminent. And
agree, but the plan, that is not the intention behind that plan. And the plan is to help us create a vision for the entire corridor area and to give us some guidelines and direction so that when Columbine Square, you know, provides us with an application, then we can help them realize what, you know, some of the direction the community does want us to go. And you're right, I don't know that high density 20-story building that's similar to that apartment complex nearby this neighborhood is what the city is saying that we want.
And a second thing, there is a lot of interest like in Denver, with neighborhoods that have a lot of innovation and excitement. And among ourselves, we use the term vibrancy. This plan doesn't seem to have any of that. Is there a reason why are we consciously avoiding those kinds of things, or did it just not happen, or what?
I'm not exactly sure, but what you mean, but I would offer that I believe both at Planning Commission and City Council during the study session, you had some conversation around this. And I think we have to recognize that it would be one thing if we were creating a corridor plan and there was nothing there. You know, we're taking an existing area of the city and working towards what is the future and what does that vision look like, recognizing that we kind of have what we have today, and how can we build to improve upon that on one level, the things that we didn't really like, but then how do we also ensure we protect and preserve the existing residential neighborhoods that have been there for a long time. right? So I think it's working towards finding that balance. So I think over time, and especially if we work towards from the council perspective of what can the city do on an implementation side to help focus and realize how we can improve upon the area out there and create more of a vibrant, innovative space for the Bellevue Corridor. I think those are all pieces of it.
Thank you. Peggy, any comments or questions?
So a few things. You used the word vision, but I don't see clearly what we want. There's some things shown in here, but they could materialize, heaven forgive my saying this, as Quonset huts. They could materialize as places where you can hear your neighbors talk when their bedroom windows open. This doesn't feel good to me. It doesn't include what I think it should, even with what's here. Buffering increases in business and residential development with more park and open space for people to actually have lives and activities and the kinds of things that so much of the rest of Littleton has. It just, to me, is very disappointing. That's not meant personal statement. It's just, I've lived in Littleton since a million years. I either lived or started working here in '68, and I've seen things change significantly, some for the better, some with statements of this is what X is going to be, and then it turned out to be something not nearly what was said it was going to be. And this seems to me to allow so much wiggle room that down the line, this isn't going to be what anybody is too happy with, or that's going to bring us revenue and the long-term viability that the city would like, or at least that I would like. So I know a lot of effort went into it, but I'm not happy with where we are yet.
Couple comments. Does anybody else
Go
have
ahead,
comments
go
or
ahead.
questions? I was actually pleased with the vigorous attempt at community input. I think that you had some meetings where you had upwards of 150 folks, and that's pretty substantial. That's hard to get. So I think that, and I had not heard from anyone that they didn't feel like they got their voice out. So I hope that there were, with all those that came, I hope that there was a good balance, obviously. One of the things I thought interesting in here was the comments about business. And we've gotten some comments from the community about it, and they would like to see particularly Columbine Square remain commercial. I think we all realize that time has come. Commercial is just not what it used to be. There's a reason that center failed. But I liked it when you guys talked about the current big boxes that we have in that area, and those are Littleton's only two big boxes, Lowe's and Home Depot, and they sell the same things. And they're both over there, and they're both doing well, hopefully. The King Soopers is in Inglewood. It's not ours. Even if it was, wouldn't matter. We don't get grocery sales tax. But what it does do is it does create, it generates traffic in terms of shoppers and people visiting the area, as does the Home Depot and the Lowe's. And one of the things I don't think we've done is a lot over there to support either one of those businesses. I know that the Home Depot, we helped them at one point. They wanted to sell part of their parking lot to a bank and put a bank in there. And I actually at first thought it was kind of a crazy idea, but now that it's done, it's like that was a really smart thing to do. That created a greater use for that piece of land than parking that wasn't going to be used. And I look at the, and I'm going to get the name wrong, but the across the street, Centennial Square, and quite honestly, in my opinion, that area has so much more potential and so much more opportunity, and that has been a massive disappointment, in my opinion, for a very long time. And so I think what this plan does is that it starts to get some conversation going, and hopefully what you're talking about in terms of a vision document, it's not the final vision, but we're starting somewhere. Before this, there were 2,000 vision documents. Anybody that drove past there had a vision of what it could be. This is a coalescence as best as we could do to create a document that tried to bring a lot of that together. I think we also need to remember that every piece of property over there is owned. Every piece of property over there is private property unless we own it and it's a park. But it's all privately owned. So when change starts to happen, it's going to have to come from the private property owners. It's going to have to come from the marketplace. The things that we can affect, I think we should. I also wanted to comment on that there was a comment, or that they liked the Riverside Downs and they liked that shopping area. But that area has been incredibly challenging to keep leased. One of the bigger restaurants in there left, and it has been empty for over a year, and there's been virtually no interest. One of the larger spaces in there was empty since it was built, and then what went in, a real estate office. So as much as, I think that there's that was a good decision to put that there, and there are some good retail in there, and there's some great business in there, and there's some some good activity, but there can also be things that can be improved in there too. And I think that high tide rises all ships, or whatever that is. But once you get people to start really talking about reinvestment and recommitting to their business, then that will have an effect even on some of these places that are seen as a higher value. The other thing I liked is when I look at the map, when you're standing at street level, you don't see the area. But when you look at the map, you can see there's an incredible amount of single-family housing over there. A lot of it is in Inglewood. There's also a fair amount of large plots of businesses, Home Depot, the larger groups. And then there's also a substantial amount of multifamily, the apartments, the condos, townhomes that are south and on the other side of Federal. Some of that housing in that area is some of our most sought after housing in our community. Arapahoe Hills, that River Point, there's a waiting list in that 25-story or however big that, there's a waiting list, and there always has been, and there probably always will be. It is hard to find openings in the other rentals, et cetera, behind there. It's a very, very popular place to live. It's a very sought-after place. So some of our best housing is over there. Clearly, some of the greatest passion in the neighborhoods is there. We've got Columbine Square has really fired up folks about what they want to happen in their neighborhood. And so it is, I think it's an area where there's a combination of things that can really coalesce to take this vision even farther with everybody cooperating on their levels. I also think that there's an opportunity. You showed a map in here with the urban renewal area, and I think there is an opportunity because we talk all the time about the infrastructure. We talked about the sewer. There was comments made this evening about electrical. There's comments about connectivity. There's comments about safety, bike and ped. All of those things are infrastructure concerns that can be taken care of with within urban renewal. So I think there's an opportunity there that we should not just ignore. The urban renewal money doesn't, that program is not just, it is not intended at all to line the pocket of a developer. That's not what it does. It actually supports a better development. So I think all of those things combined, I like the tweaks that you've made to it. I think it's a better plan. I think combined with some of the things that the city's doing, some of the existing plans that we have in place, I think that this is a good vision document. And so I also appreciate your work and thank you for your presentation this evening. And Karina, you had?
I have one more comment. I think, both, comments that Carol and Peggy brought forward of, where is there more of the excitement or the innovation, et cetera? How do we get what we're really looking for? So a couple of things. So one, as far as bringing this to life is our responsibility now. We have this as a guiding document, but yes, there's underlying zoning. And so where zoning exists, it will exist as is until a proposal comes forward for a change, and that's where this document becomes the guiding principles of what that change is as desired by the community and as thought of as an area, not just one individual plot of land. And that's something that we struggled with in other parts of the city, where it's like we're making a decision on this plot of land, but really we want to have that bigger picture of how does it fit into everything else. So I think this document gives us that. And then as far as just innovative or more creative, I think one of the other things that we do have here is we do have the short term that I talk about being more actionable, and some of that more truly kind of out there visionary and what it can be will come with has to come with a lot of work, and it actually comes with a lot of risk when you look at some of those long-term recommendations. And so for me, I look at this as a plan where we actually have the potential to exceed our expectations. Instead of setting ourselves up for something that's so out there, but then find ourselves being disappointed. And I think we want to be on a path of success in our city, and I see this as that type of plan that allows us to incrementally be successful through this area. So that's how I look at this work that was done here.
Okay. Peggy?
Yeah, so you used the word vision, and Karina used the word vision, and that's what I see this as, a vision. Could we not just call it vision?
Domini Sancta, vision.
I mean, it seems to me that we would have a compromise in terms of that that is what it is. It's not lockstep, and if something comes along that is a little different or whatever, as long as it's somewhere in that vision piece, it makes sense to me. But to call it a plan, I mean, if I plan a vacation, I don't want to have a vision of it. I want to have a plan for it with tickets and all of that. And so maybe it is my, my college English background here, but to me it's an important issue and something that would help us all.
The motion?
Sure. First, I do want to say that it is a vision study type thing. I think as we move forward with our codes and stuff, this is going to help everybody to really see it. Like you said, with the map, you really see a lot of things. With that in mind, Mayor, I do move to approve Resolution 33-2018.
Second, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
So
And
I would, can I amend the motion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would move to amend the title to vision.
We need a second.
Second.
We have an amendment to rename this the Bellevue Avenue Corridor Vision. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ready to vote?
We're voting on the amendment.
Voting on the amendment to change the name to Bellevue Avenue Corridor Plan, a yes would change it. Bellevue Avenue Corridor Vision.
The vote is 5 in favor with Councilmember Brinkman and Councilmember Elrod voting no. The motion carries 5-3.
3 to 2.
5 to 3?
3 to 2.
3 to 2.
Sorry, 3 to 2.
Somebody didn't vote.
Who didn't vote?
Who didn't vote? We have to go
4,
back
5,
and vote
6.
again. I'm sorry.
Okay, can you restate the,
Okay.
be clear on it?
The amendment is to change the name from Bellevue Avenue Corridor Plan to Bellevue Avenue Corridor Vision.
Sorry.
The vote is 4 in favor with Councilmember Brinkman, or Mayor Brinkman and Councilmember Elrod voting no. The motion carries 4 to 2.
Get her a calculator.
Okay. Any additional amendments?
I have a couple of amendments that I'd like to make. So the first one, I would take you to page 18 of the plan. And this is a minor...
Of the vision. It's now the vision? No. Could be the vision. We haven't decided, I guess.
Of the draft?
The draft?
Of the draft?
And it is, let me just get there myself. Okay.
So you're actually amending the main motion, correct?
Yes.
Correct. So policy...
What page again?
18.
Policy R1.4, vacant underperforming spaces. So in this section, if you go to continue to work with existing shopping center owners to infill vacant pad sites or reposition underperforming pad sites with other uses. One of the things that we heard a lot from the citizens was the absolute and very valid concern to say, I don't want to turn a commercial property to residential or something else, or it could be vice versa. So my concern was a little bit with the language of reposition underperforming pad sites with other uses. And I think the intent and the desire is that it is more for with a mix of uses. So we want diversity. We want different things. We don't want all of necessarily one or the other. And especially in the case when we talk about underperforming shopping centers, we definitely don't want them converted to all residential. So I think it's a small nuance, but I think it's an important one. It doesn't necessarily change the intent and of the document and what was intended here. I just think it's better written and clearer. And I would also want to strike the example multi-use. I just crossed over it. Oh, what does it say? 'Cause I crossed over.
Family residential.
Yeah, I think we strike that because that actually kind of says, yes, you should have multi-residential, and we're saying we want to be open to a mix of uses to be considered. So
what's your actual motion?
What was your first?
So the amendment is perform pad sites with a mix of uses and strike out what's in parentheses.
Multifamily residential.
Want me to read it from the beginning?
Yes.
Continue to work with existing shopping center owners to infill vacant pad sites or reposition underperforming pad sites with a mix of uses. And then semicolon. Is that clear for
We
you
need a
guys?
second.
I second.
Councilmember Driscoll seconded.
Second today.
Any comments, any questions? Okay, does everybody understand the amendment?
I have a question.
Yes.
Did you remove the multifamily?
I did.
Any comments, questions? Ready to vote?
I'll have to go back and listen to it.
Kyle?
The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Okay, next one.
Vote for him next time?
No, thank you.
Page 15.
Page 15.
Okay, so page 15 is Principle 1, create a more distinct identity for the Bellevue Avenue. I would like to strike the policy on wayfinding. When we talk about creating, it's policy ID 1.2. When we talk about creating identity, being distinct, and there is a policy on branding, to me, wayfinding is just another tool you could use. I do not feel that wayfinding should be a policy in and of itself. I don't think it should have that level of weight. Wayfinding doesn't necessarily work everywhere. And so my motion is to strike policy ID 1.2 wayfinding in its entirety. And I would like to add to policy ID-1.1 branding to read, again, I scribbled my notes so I can't see it.
Branding's there.
Encourage the use of distinctive urban design elements, banners, comma, wayfinding signs, and other features as part of future revitalization. So we still allow the opportunity to consider wayfinding, but it is not a policy. Is that clear? Okay. The other component of this is that
we need to get a second on that before you discuss.
It's going to be part of the whole thing.
Go ahead and
Can you just make the motion and then discuss it after, because it makes it very confusing.
There's
Okay,
another piece.
one moment. Go ahead and give us what your comment is, and if we need to break it up into three, we will.
This also affects implementation strategies in the back, and so my motion would be to strike any implementation strategies related to wayfinding as well. Strategy ID 1 and strategy ID 2. How do you want me to do that, Wendy?
That's fine. That's not what I was talking about. It's fine.
Okay, so we have a motion to strike policy ID 1.2 and add banners, wayfinding, and other features into ID 1. That we need a second for this amendment. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Cole. So we will restate it before we vote. Any comments or questions on the amendment? I have a comment on it. I actually am going to support this because I have great concern about the references it's making to the Mary Carter Greenway signage. That is very, very, very specific signage. It comes with incredibly specific guidelines and rules, and to in any way insinuate that there may be opportunity to add signage along the Mary Carter is not appropriate at all at this point, in that we have pretty strong standards about the signage along there, which we've had to maintain very rigidly because so many people want to put stuff along there. So I think that this creates a little bit more clarity, and so I would support it for that reason.
I'm wondering about banners. When I think about signage from the code perspective, I'm not sure that banners should be encouraged.
So it's already in there, so you would have to add an amendment to take it out if you wanted to.
Oh, I would.
Sorry. I'll high-five
Let's
you
just
instead.
deal
Never
with this.
mind.
Let's deal with this amendment. So we have, is there any other comments or questions? So we have an amendment to remove policy ID 1.2 wayfinding, and to, under policy ID 1.1 branding, encourage the use of distinctive urban design elements, banners, wayfinding, and other features as part of, and it continues on as is. Does everybody understand the amendment? All right, I'm ready to vote.
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we're back to the original motion.
What about striking the strategies that are in the implementation that refer to wayfinding?
I think that will be settled.
Automatic.
Talk to the city manager, and that's going to be handled fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll make sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so clerk, would you mind reading the original motion?
To approve.
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez moved, and Councilmember
Driscoll?
Driscoll moved, seconded to approve Resolution 33, 2018, which approves the Bellevue Corridor Plan with amendments as stated.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are you guys ready to vote?
The vote is 5 in favor, with Councilmember Fay voting no. The motion carries 6-1.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you, Darcy and Matt. Appreciate your work. Okay, our next order of business is Ordinance 29, 2018. This is an emergency ordinance establishing a moratorium on the issuance of business and sales/use tax licenses under the lodging classification for short-term rentals. This will be presented by our city attorney. Council, I will remind you that this takes a supermajority vote. We will need a vote, either yay or nay, of a full 5. City attorney?
Mayor, council, this item, as mentioned, it is an emergency ordinance. The reason that this is an emergency is we currently have provisions in our zoning code that are not adequate to address the issue of short-term rentals. And short-term rentals are basically many times advertised online, a number of different entities. One of the difficulties is that because we don't have the right tools in place, we are finding that we have had some situations. For example, we've had one recently that work was done in a basement. Mechanical equipment was brought into the basement, placed in the basement without adequate detection for carbon monoxide and ventilation. Obviously, that's a public safety concern. We've had other concerns with these being compatible with existing neighborhoods. Certainly, we respect private property rights. We certainly appreciate the right of people to do things with their property, but we also at the same time want to make sure that those uses are compatible with the existing uses in the neighborhood. What's before you tonight is what we call a moratorium. This basically freezes the status quo. The question has been raised by some citizens, why is it 90 days? It's 90 days because the city charter limits it to 90 days. That doesn't mean that you couldn't adopt an extension by a first and second read. It simply means that this ordinance can only be effective for 90 days. Now, during the moratorium period, there's a couple of important things to note. We will be enforcing our existing codes. We enforce those on a complaint basis. So if we receive a complaint about a building code or some other kind of code violation, we will continue to enforce those codes. What this will do is there will not be any new business licenses issued as of beginning of business tomorrow morning should council adopt this. And by business licenses, these uses do require a business license and the payment of sales tax, and that is what will be frozen for the next 90 days. And but the existing holders of business licenses will be able to continue to operate. Checking with the finance department as of right now, we have 10 business licenses. One came in and met all the requirements, and it has been issued. So we have 10 licensees right now who have licenses who would continue to operate during this period. We, the staff working with Ms. Mills, we do believe we will be able to bring to you, and we plan, in fact, to bring to you a concept with a series of policy choices seeking your guidance on July 31st. That's the next study session. And we'll have a series of policy questions where we'll be asking you to provide guidance, and that will then be incorporated into the structure which we'll bring back to you. We have looked at a number of other cities. This is not a unique issue to Littleton. This is an issue that across the United States is being addressed. As part of bringing this to you, we'll later have a conversation on some concepts for enforcement and how that might be accomplished. But the important thing tonight and that would be the end of my presentation, is this is an emergency ordinance that will impose for a 90-day period a moratorium on the issuance of business licenses for short-term rentals. And the entire purpose is simply to freeze the status quo in place while we bring to you some means to address these issues. And with that, I would be pleased to answer any questions that the council might have.
Any questions, council? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council.
Okay, I need a motion, please.
Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem?
I move to approve the emergency ordinance establishing a moratorium on the issuance of business and sales/use taxes under the lodging classification for short-term rental properties.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Mayor, can the clerk make sure that the record reflects that there was a supermajority for purposes of the record?
Thank you.
Good point.
Okay, our next item is reports. City Manager, do you have a report?
Mayor and council, maybe just a
Microphone needs a little.
Sorry, a little WD-40 there. Yeah, maybe just a kind of a follow-up comment now that the council has actually adopted the Bellevue Corridor vision. I think one of the steps that I would suggest to the council, and we can certainly talk about this here in the coming weeks, is what I would suggest is probably the next step. The consultant kind of characterized this as a kind of a 10,000-foot view of what we could do. I think what is more logical for the next step here is to kind of drill down to probably the 1,000-foot level. And that is an implementation plan, taking those strategies and actually having staff look at those policies, programs. We talked about a couple, perhaps how Dr. Cog may fit into this, and actually look at a plan that would implement this thing over time. In my view, in order for us to be successful with something like this, you actually have to have a work plan that we keep in front of us. I think as a document that we keep behind us and reference as projects move forward, I think will not serve us well. And so I think in order for us to truly be successful, we got to have a work plan. And I think this is something that we probably haven't done here before specifically. So I have a few examples of what I've worked with in the past, and I would like to work with staff here to kind of perhaps capture something and discuss with council here in the coming weeks. I do think plans like this certainly can influence our budget, which, as the council knows, we're going to start diving into that here probably September with you. So that would be perhaps one comment I would make. Other than that, that's my only kind of comment or report here for this evening.
Thank you. City Attorney?
Mayor, council, I have no reports. I did respond to a citizen email today, and I have copied all of you on that.
Thank you. Councilmember Cole?
Yeah, on positive note, I'm just wanting to observe what everybody in this room I know knows, and I hope a hell of a lot of people, excuse the word, at home know, what an incredible community we live in. We have incredible schools, top-notch schools. We've got, from my view, incredible citizens. They don't all agree, which is wonderful. There's dialogue. There's sometimes strong dialogue, but at least there's dialogue, and that's great. We've got a great museum, a great library, great bunch of everything. We've got wonderful community groups that support various or sponsor various kinds of activities, including the back to school night in the Northeast neighborhood. Incredible thing. We've got the historic downtown. And so I'm just wanting us to celebrate whenever we get a chance and whenever we're invited to participate in various activities, including the back to school night, which is in the Northeast neighborhood. And if council wants to know, I'll email you all, but I'm wanting to say it's the 12th of August, but I won't swear. But anyway, it's a wonderful event for the elementary schools in the Northeast neighborhood. And we have funded the squirt truck, I think, to be there to squirt the kids. Hopefully it'll be hot. But the reason that you all agreed when I requested it for us to fund that again is when it's hot, if the kids get to come out and run through the hose, more will come out of the apartments otherwise, and then their families will come, and so then we engage the whole community there. So it's a wonderful, wonderful event. Anyway, thank everybody who happens to hear this for all you do.
Thank you. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, I had the pleasure of attending the CMLA conference with I think 7 other staff and council members. Just want to let you know your tax dollars were well at work there. I got a lot out of that. It was very enjoyable to hear from other cities, from other planners, to hear what their challenges are. Again, I echo what Peggy has said. We are in a very nice position in Littleton. Although we have our differences at times, I think we're well positioned going into the future to continue to improve on those things that need improvement. Also, just a reminder, August 4th, the Littleton Criterium. Is anybody watching? I highly recommend coming down for that event on that Saturday night.
Tell them what that is for the people that don't know.
The little Criterium is a bike race on a circuit going up Main Street. It's a timed race typically for the professionals. The amateurs will do a number of laps. There will be 7 different levels of cyclists, and this year, I understand Littleton will get some great national publicity where it will be broadcast on the USA Cycling channel. There are only 7 events being shown, 7 criteriums showing around the country, and Littleton will be one of those. So very exciting time for Littleton.
All right, a couple things. Littleton has 3 high schools, Heritage High School, Options, and Littleton High School, of course. And I was excited to find out that the wrestling team, the new startup wrestling team for Littleton High School came by my neighborhood and were cleaning windows. So they're going to have hopefully they're going to have a team that they can field for the coming years. It's going to be a tough go for them, but support them if you can, financially especially. They do need help. And even more important to me, 2 weeks ago, my first grandchild was born, Tucker. So that's all.
Councilmember Fay.
It has been up in the air for some time about what's going to happen with the Highline Canal. And it's been settled by the Highline Canal Conservancy that it is going to have water regularly because they've arranged with the jurisdictions of the whole 71 miles of the canal that their storm water will be diverted into it or flow into it. We have this Saturday the executive director of the Highline Canal Conservancy who is speaking at a meeting. That's the District 3 citizen meeting, and that's going to be at the Wilmore Garden Center down on County Line Road at Broadway. And so Harriet Lemaire will be there speaking about how that's all going to happen. And she's a fabulous creative thinker about how to get things done. She's really good at getting money together and getting people to work together. Imagine 71 miles of different jurisdictions, and they pulled it together. So that's at 9:30 at the Wilmore Garden Center.
Thank you. Councilmember Elrod.
So building on what Peggy said, actually, Peggy, for all of those reasons, Littleton was actually ranked number 7th as the top destination in Colorado. So we made the top 10, not only the top 10, we're actually at number 7. So for a lot of those reasons. A couple of other things for transportation and Dr. Cog and the various transportation forums that we participate in. We are right now in the process of refining the submissions that will go in front of the Dr. Cog Board for consideration of projects. And so that will happen this summer. What little is left of it, but we do ask for patience as it will be a bit of a process as they vet through all of that. And we know if the Pell is one of the projects that's being presented and very well supported by many, actually. So it's looking good for us. And I think that's all I have for now.
Okay. A couple quick things. Following up on Mark's comments, I like what you said about if you put the plan behind us, nothing's going to happen. It needs to stay in front of us, and creating that work plan. And I think that's really key, because one of the things we continually hear from people who are interested in doing anything in the city of Littleton, any developer or anybody who wants to do something different with their property, is that they don't know what we want. And so they'll either do what they want or they won't do anything at all. So I think that in order for Littleton to really create its future, then this is where this happens, and this is where this continues to happen. And I know that we have a lot of these things coming up, and we have a lot of large parcels where there's interest, and we have a lot of corridors a number of important corridors where there has been quite a bit of activity, and we will see more. And it is becoming more and more and more important for this community to work together to determine what we want this future, what we want it to look like. Not everybody is going to get everything they want, but if we don't work together, if we don't have healthy conversations, if we don't create a dialogue where we're listening to each other, then we will get what they want to build. And we've seen examples of that. And so this council has committed continuously to continuing to keep those communication open. One of our 3 imperatives is relationships, and that includes a relationship with the community in terms of conversation. We've had a number of things pop up. We've got J Armory. We have what's happening in the neighborhood with the Airbnb. There's a couple of other issues that have popped up, and all of those things are things that we're going to work with and things that we're going to deal with, but you don't deal with them if you don't have healthy conversations first. And I think working with the neighborhood on the Airbnb is an example of that. I think hopefully we'll be able to have some good results with folks in South Park. But that's how we're going to do it. That's how we're going to make these things happen. And like I said, it's not about everybody winning. It's about, at the end of the day, we all are able to create a community that we are happy with and continue to be happy with. And it's going to take work that we're all in. Speaking of taking work, pretty big task over the weekend. And you probably saw it on the news. If not, I'll share it now. We did mention it at a study session, which is why I wanted to close the loop tonight, that we did close the river. We do not often close the river. I think it's been very rare. I know it's been very rare, and it's been extremes, and in some cases emergencies that has happened. But the city manager holds the privilege of being able to do that. There was a great deal of discussion with our partners at South Suburban, because an issue arose of a large tubing event that was, in our opinion, imminent, despite our best attempts to try to work with the promoter. And so there was an aggressive outreach to the media, and fortunately they all worked quite cooperatively with the city to get that word out, and we had a very, very, very boring weekend at the park. So the police I think they're wondering why we even had them out there. But we had them out there because had we not done what we did, it would have probably looked like it looked last year when we didn't know it was happening, and there were about 4,000 people who came to visit our river in one fell swoop and get out in one fell swoop. So I think that was a success, and I appreciate all the work on staff. I appreciate the work with our partners with South Suburban, and having a successful conclusion to that. So, council, tomorrow morning, we meet with our friends at the sewer treatment.
Tomorrow or
Thursday.
Thursday? Oh, it's a Thursday. At the sewer treatment facility to have one of our joint meetings. So we look forward to seeing you there. Those are also open to the public. Real fun. Breakfast at the sewer treatment plant. All right. If there's no other business, we're adjourned.
All right.